All right, this is part 2 of lesson 4.2 on the unit circle. Quick refresher, the trig functions, sin stands for sine, cos is cosine, tan is tangent, csc is cosecant, sec is secant, and cot is cotangent. Just a reminder of how we say each of those abbreviations. The trig functions, if t is a real number and x comma y is the point on the unit circle that corresponds to it. The sine, remember sine is always opposite over hypotenuse, but the hypotenuse in the unit circle is always 1. So the sine is just the opposite, which is your y coordinate. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. Hypotenuse again is 1. Adjacent is just our x coordinate. And tangent is opposite over adjacent, which is y over x. We do need a little special rule here. X can't be 0. Tangent doesn't exist if x is 0. The other three, remember, are just the reciprocals. So the reciprocal of y is 1 over y. This one we have to specify. Y can't be 0, though. Secant then is 1 over x. Again, x cannot be 0 here. And cotangent would be x over y. And again, y can't be 0 on that one. This is how we use the unit circle. So we're going to find the exact value of each trig function using the unit circle. So I've got my unit circle here ready to go. The sine of t if t is 2 pi over 3. To do this, we start off by looking for 2 pi over 3 on my unit circle. There it is. The coordinate there is negative 1/2 square root 3 over 2. So I'm going to write that down just so I have it. Sine, we just said, is the y coordinate. So that means the sine of 2 pi over 3 will be the y coordinate, which is square root 3 over 2. Done. We'll do the same thing for our next one. I have 7 pi over 6. I grab my unit circle. I find 7 pi over 6. The coordinate is negative square root 3 over 2, negative 1/2. So the cosine of my angle, 7 pi over 6, is the x coordinate, which is negative square root 3 over 2. Done. There's my answer. So we'll try that again. The tangent of angle t if t is 3 pi over 4. Well, the coordinates at 3 pi over 4 are negative square root 2 over 2, positive square root 2 over 2. Tangent is y over x. So the tangent of 3 pi over 4 is square root 2 over 2 over negative square root 2 over 2. Tangent gets a little wonky, but notice we're dividing something by itself, and there's a negative. So our answer is negative 1. Secant of 7 pi over 4. Find 7 pi over 4. The coordinate is square root 2 over 2, negative square root 2 over 2. So secant is 1 over the x value, which is square root 2 over 2. To divide by a fraction, remember that we multiply by its reciprocal. I don't like square roots in the denominator. I get 2 square root 2 over regular 2. Those 2's cancel. And the secant of 7 pi over 4 is the square root of 2. The nice thing about the unit circle is that once you've done the 6 trig functions for every angle, you don't have to do them again because they're not going to change. So the sine of 15 pi over 4. Well, I find 15 pi over 4. It's not on the unit circle. So we find an angle that is. We subtract 2 pi because 15 pi over 4 is too big. Turn that into pi over 4s, though. That's 8 pi over 4. So I get 7 pi over 4. So I'm going to find the sine of 7 pi over 4. Start with those coordinates. Square root 2 over 2, negative square root 2 over 2. I want the sine of 7 pi over 4, which is the y coordinate. So negative square root 2 over 2. The only problem here is that I wasn't looking for the sine of 7 pi over 4. I was looking for the sine of 15 pi over 4. But since the unit circle just goes around and around and around and repeats, it's the same thing. So there's my answer. Cosecant of 23 pi over 6. Well, 23 pi over 6 is not on my unit circle. And I noticed that it's too big, so I'm going to subtract 2 pi. Turn that into 6, which is 12 pi over 6. And I get 11 pi over 6. Coordinates at 11 pi over 6 are square root 3 over 2, negative 1/2. If I want the cosecant, I'm going to go straight to 23 pi over 6. Cosecant is 1 over y. Y is negative 1/2. Multiplying by a reciprocal means that the cosecant of 23 pi over 6 is negative 2. And to show you that work, remember we go 1 times negative 2 over 1, so we get negative 2. All right, 8 pi over 3. Well, it's too big, so start off the same way we did with the last ones. We'll subtract 2 pi. And turn that 2 pi into thirds, so that's 6 pi over 3. We get 2 pi over 3. The coordinates for 2 pi over 3 are negative 1/2, square root 3 over 2. So to get the cotangent of 8 pi over 3, we take x over y. Negative 1/2 over square root 3 over 2. The nice thing about fractions is if they have the same denominator, it cancels in this case. But I could also multiply by the reciprocal of the denominator. Oh, look, those 2's cancel. I have negative 1 over the square root of 3. Well, we don't want to square root in our answer, or in the denominator, so we multiply it up to the numerator. And the cotangent of 8 pi over 3 is negative square root 3 over 3. Tangent of negative 5 pi over 3. Well, it's not on the unit circle, so it's definitely too small because there's no negatives, so I'm going to add 2 pi. And turn that into 6 pi over 3. So we get 1 pi over 3, which gives me the coordinates 1/2 square root 3 over 2. And now I need the tangent of that. So I want the tangent, negative 5 pi over 3, is y, which is square root 3 over 2, over x, which is 1/2. Remember, we keep the first one the same, change to multiplication, and flip the second one. The 2's cancel. I have the tangent of negative 5 pi over 3 is just the square root of 3. We'll be doing a lot with the same fractions over and over, so you'll get very used to them. All right, negative 3 pi. I want all 6 trig functions for this. So negative 3 pi is not on the unit circle, so we add 2 pi. And we get negative pi, which is still not on the unit circle, so we add 2 pi again. And we get positive pi. The coordinates there are negative 1, 0. So now we find the 6 trig functions. So the sine of negative 3 pi is the y coordinate, which is 0. The cosine of negative 3 pi is the x coordinate, which is negative 1. And the tangent of negative 3 pi is y over x, which is just 0. Now the cosecant of negative 3 pi is 1 over 0, which is undefined. The secant of negative 3 pi is 1 over negative 1, which is negative 1. And the cotangent of negative 3 pi is 1 over 0 again, so undefined. Anytime one of your coordinates is a 0, you'll have 2 pieces that are undefined. How about 7 pi over 2? Well, 7 pi over 2 is not on the unit circle, so we subtract 2 pi. Which means we are subtracting 4 pi over 2, which leaves us with 3 pi over 2, which gives me the coordinates 0, negative 1. So let's find our 6 trig functions. The sine of 7 pi over 2 is -1, the y-coordinate. The cosine of 7 pi over 2 is 0, the x-coordinate. And the tangent of 7 pi over 2 is -1 over 0. Can't divide by 0, that's undefined. The cosecant of 7 pi over 2 is 1 over -1, so -1. The secant of 7 pi over 2 is 1 over 0, so undefined. And the cotangent of 7 pi over 2 is x over y, so it is 0. So be careful, if your tangent is undefined, that means your cotangent is going to be 0. A couple important identities now. Cosecant is equal to 1 over sine. Probably picked up on that. Sine is also equal to 1 over cosine. Cosecant. Sine and cosecant are reciprocals. Same thing with secant and cosine. Secant is equal to 1 over the cosine. Cosine is equal to 1 over the secant. They are reciprocals. And also cotangent and tangent. Cotangent is equal to 1 over tangent. Tangent is equal to 1 over cotangent. They are reciprocals. Also, tangent and cotangent can be written in terms of sine and cosine. Tangent is the ratio of sine and cosine. It is the sine of our angle over the cosine of our angle. Cotangent is just the reciprocal of that, so it's cosine of our angle over the sine of our angle. So, given that the sine of our angle is 3/7 and the cosine is 2 square root 10 over 7, we'll use all of our rules to find the values of the other trig functions. So we've got sine and cosine. Let's go for tangent of angle T. Tangent is sine over cosine. So sine is 3/7. Cosine is 2 square root 10 over 7. Remember, we're taking 3/7 times 7 over 2 square root 10. My 7's cancel, leaving me 3 over 2 square root 10. We don't like square roots in the denominator, so multiply it on up. 3 square root 10 over 20 is my tangent. All right, cosecant. Cosecant is 1 over the sine, so that's 1 over 3/7. So that's 1 times 7 over 3, which is just 7/3. Secant. Secant is 1 over cosine. So that's 1 over 2 square root 10 over 7, which makes it 7 over 2 square root 10. And get that square root out of the denominator. We get 7 square root 10 over 20. And finally, cotangent. Different ways you can do cotangent. I personally would take cosine over sine in this case. Our cosine is 2 square root 10 over 7. Our sine is 3 over 7. And while you may see a shorter way to do this, I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal of the denominator. My 7's cancel. Oops. This is a 2, not a 3. I'm left with 2 square root 10 over 3. Then we have the Pythagorean identities. And if you remember none of these other Pythagorean identities, remember this one. Sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. You can get to the other ones from that. But tangent squared plus 1 is equal to secant squared. 1 plus cotangent squared is equal to cosecant squared. These are very helpful. So we know that sine is -2/5, and our angle is between 3 pi over 2 and 2 pi. Let's just think about what that piece means. 3 pi over 2 is right here. 2 pi is here. Our angle is right over there. We're going to find the other trig functions. All right. Well, I know sine squared of t plus cosine squared of t equals 1. So if the sine is -2/5, cosine squared of t equals 1, I can find cosine. So I get 4/25 plus cosine squared of t equals 25/25. Subtract that 4/25, I get cosine squared of t equals 21/25. Square root, I get the cosine, cosine of t equals the square root of 21 over 5, positive or negative. Let's think about this. The cosine corresponds to the x value, and in the fourth quadrant of the unit circle, x values are positive. So we know that in our final answer, the cosine is positive square root of 21 over 5. Then we'll go to tangent. Tangent is sine over cosine, tangent of t, sine of t over cosine of t. The sine is negative 2/5. The cosine is square root of 21 over 5. We take negative 2/5 times 5 over the square root of 21. The 5's cancel, leaving me negative 2 over the square root of 21. Get the square root out of my denominator. I get negative 2 square root 21 over 21. There is the tangent of t. Now let's find our cosecant. Cosecant is 1 over sine. So we have 1 over negative 2/5, which is negative 5 over 2. There's my cosecant. My secant is 1 over my cosine. So 1 over the square root of 21 over 5 gives me 5 over the square root of 21. Rationalize my denominator. I get 5 square root of 21 over 21. So there's my secant. And my cotangent will go cosine over sine. The cosine is square root of 21 over 5. The sine is negative 2/5. We are going to multiply by the reciprocal of the denominator. Gives me negative square root of 21 over 2. So right up here, these 5 fractions are my answer. All right, you can also use a calculator for some of these. First step is to set the mode on your calculator to degrees or radians, whichever one you're using. This is very, very, very important. It is also the most commonly forgotten step. Step 2, or to do that, you press mode, press down twice, and then select either radian or degree by using the left or right arrows, and select your choice by pressing enter. Now to use a calculator, sine, cosine, and tangent are very straightforward. Just select the one you're using and enter it in for the angle. There are 2 methods for finding cosecant, secant, and cotangent. The first one, you can type 1, then divided by, then the corresponding reciprocal function. So for cosecant, you do 1 divided by the sine of your angle. Cosine for secant, and tangent for cotangent. Or you can do parentheses, tangent, or whatever, your angle, close those parentheses, close the first parentheses, and then press the x -1 key. Both of them will give you the same answer. I personally prefer method 1. So let's use a calculator to approximate each of these. So sine of 2 pi over 7, that's radians. So I click mode. I'm in degrees. Down twice. Press enter. Clear. Now I just type sine of 2 pi divided by 7. There we go. That is my answer. 0.782. Secant of 0.92. Now this doesn't have a pi in it, but it is still in radians. Secant is 1 over cosine, so 1 divided by cosine of 0.92. My answer is 1.651. There we go. Tangent of pi over 12. All right, so I take my calculator, tan, second pi divided by 12, 0.268. Cosecant corresponds to sine. 1.4 is a radian measure also. So 1 divided by sine of 1.4 gives me 1.015. Now you might be wondering, Ms. Dupree, how do you know that that is in radians? That is in radians because it doesn't have a degree symbol. If it's in degrees, it'll say degrees. So your assignment will be a worksheet or 2 on unit circle.